Andy Ellis, Akamai. Password stuffing is an emerging trend, not just for consumers, but for the C-suite as well. However, almost nobody knows what exactly password stuffing is. So help us understand the mechanics here. How does this work, and who is under threat of password stuffing?
Sure. Let's start by looking at how passwords work on the web in general. Right? You go to a website, maybe somebody invites you to some new hot trend here in New York City, and they say, oh, log in, create a sign up. So you give them your email address and you have to put in a password. And you're thinking, God, I'm never coming back to this website, so I'm just going to reuse that password that I use every day for something else. Maybe if you're really good, use a password vault, create a new password for it that you won't even remember, but that's not what most people are doing. They're reusing passwords across websites. Maybe you have a bank that you have a password at, and you need to open up a new banking account, and you just want to use the same password so you don't have to forget it. So we start from this model where people are logging into two different websites where they have the same email address or username and same password on both of those websites. And at some point, one of them gets compromised. And so they're broken into, and their whole directory of usernames and passwords is published on the dark web. Actually, it's published on the light web if you know where to look to. And now people have these giant manifests of valid email address and password combinations. Now what they do with those is they'll come to some website and they'll say, well, I'm going to just try just these combinations. So they might know that Dan Patterson at yahoo.com is a valid email address. And they know that somewhere you use this password. I'm not going to reveal what it is for you today. And they're going to just keep trying it. And then I try that at this one website, and if it works, so that's what's called credential stuffing. It's where you take this list of possibly valid credentials, come to a website, and just keep trying them until you see which one works. Now what often happens at this point, the person has a valid username and password, they don't even log in with it. They don't do anything else with it. They just take that really long list of passwords that might have been good. Now they have a short list of passwords that they're going to sell to somebody else. And so what's really interesting is the gig economy really underlies what's happening with password stuffing. So they've done this, they sell it to somebody else. Now that other person comes and says, oh, you happen to use this at a retailer. Well, can I get access to your gift cards? Do you have a credit card on file that I can buy something and ship it? Maybe I'll post on eBay that I have a plasma TV for sale. And when somebody buys it, I'll come use your credentials to actually buy one and ship it to their house, and I'll walk away with their money. So there's any number of ways that somebody might monetize it, but what they're really doing is they're attacking anybody who has ever reused a password with the same email address or username across multiple sites to try to log into one of their accounts.
All right, so the gig economy, I get that is a minor type of fraud, but help me understand the harm. Who is harmed by password stuffing? And do you have a few examples of something that is not just some kind of minor fraud, but really scales?
Yep. So there's a couple places where you see it. So obviously is in the minor fraud. Somebody takes over your account so that they can commit fraud through a retailer. But maybe they take over your account in a bank, and now they can log in as you to the bank and just steal your money. That's not minor fraud anymore. It's not like you can call them up and say, hey, give me back my money, although in many cases they will. But it also now moves into the corporate environment. Maybe the password that you reused was the one that you used to log into our company. Now you can log in as that person, and maybe that person was an executive. So now I can log in and I can send email as this executive to somebody else, and we get into major fraud. There's an entire class of attacks today that we see sort of parallel to this that usually don't involve credential stuffing, just involves fake email where people pretend to be the CEO and they send mail into a finance department and they go, hey, don't tell anybody because we're working on this secret deal, but I need you to wire $150,000 to this offshore bank. And the $150,000 isn't even their goal. The goal is to see if I can get you to wire money. Because once you've wired $150,000, now I'll come back and start getting you to move millions of dollars. And that's happened to several companies, which is pretty unfortunate for them, especially because by the time they discover it, it's already moved out of that offshore bank, and there's nothing they can do to recover the money.